Sometimes the most innocent actions have unintended consequences. This is a story about Joe, a story about how something small can cascade. Joe's website is a magazine website. Joe has had throughout the time of the magazine many employees. Now it's just Joe and some freelance writers. Joe went fully digital a few years ago and uses WordPress and WooCommerce with subscriptions. Joe's site is well trafficked and it is his primary source of income. But Joe doesn't believe he has a budget for security or even development, so he relies on stock plugins. At the heart of his site is a popular page builder. It gives him the flexibility to do almost everything he wants. One day he was on Twitter, as it was called back then, when he saw a funny GIF. There was a link to a website where he could sign up to get more funny GIFs. I don't know why he chose to sign up that day, but he did. People do funny things and sign up to any old rubbish. Over the next few weeks, Joe got several emails from the site. One caught his eye, a build your own meme generator. That sounds great. It's like this really cool website that allows you to remix memes. One of the features was a browser extension to allow you to quickly insert memes onto your website. Joe installed the extension and logged into his site. He was left disappointed. The extension just didn't seem to work. But something had happened. As his browser made the post request on the WP login page, the extension made its own request. The payload, a URL, username, and password. The browser extension is malware designed specifically aimed at site owners of WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. All the extension would ever do is harvest credentials and send them to the remote server. Weeks pass. Joe had forgotten he had the extension installed. Even though it was not working, he, like many others, just left it, and it carried on harvesting across the couple of sites he logged into. The original meme site was long gone. The extension no longer available to install. One day, on a forum in the deepest, darkest parts of the web, a new post appeared, offering a dump of 50,000 legitimate WordPress admin credentials. $1 per account. $1 exclusive 24-hour access. The seller would give the credentials to the buyer 24 hours ahead before the whole lot go on a general sale as a bundle. As part of the forum post, there was a link to a public-facing CSV dump. The dump included the domain name, the number of users on the site, and some SEO metrics. Hacking is a business, and like any business, has supply chains. The group that created the extension and harvested the credentials will have sold the list to a middleman seller. This seller is the person selling on the forum. We can't be sure if the credentials were specifically bought that day or in the non-exclusive cred list, but it's a good guess that they were. Joe, life was carrying on. He went to log into the site and a strange thing happened. His password wouldn't work. It just kept saying, incorrect password. Frustrated, he reset, the email arrived, he created a new password and carried on with his day. Joe was updating WordPress core and it just wouldn't update. Some sort of permission error. Joe would tell you he is an untechnical person. An untechnical person with a knowledge of FTP, file permissions, and a deep knowledge of how he uses WordPress. He even occasionally downloads the backups from his backup plugin to his local dev environment. When someone says that they are technical or untechnical, it's often based on an assumed baseline that might in no way reflect your own. For many, Joe has a good technical knowledge of how to use WordPress. Today though, he just couldn't get it to work. So he contacted his web host.
Hello?
An email a little while later, they had forced updated the site and it was fine now. Joe logged in and indeed the site was fine. Let us leave Joe and briefly visit the web host. The technician who got Joe's ticket was incredibly busy that day. Things had been going wrong. The local coffee shop was closed, someone was out sick. When the technician got in, they found several of their colleagues were also out sick. The technician logged onto the server and to Joe's files and used WP CLI to update. Like Joe, they got a file permission error. So he tried sudo WP core update allow root. The site updated. Brilliant. His emails have been quiet. Indeed, if Joe had been paying closer attention, his emails have been quiet since 2 a.m. on Saturday morning. When he went to his website, he wasn't presented with the login screen. Instead, he was presented with nothing. His site wouldn't load, his emails wouldn't load, his website appeared gone. Panicking, he went to log into his host control panel. It wasn't working, it was gone. He tried using his phone, different IPs, asking friends, nothing, and no one could get to them. He went through his call logs and found the host's phone number. It just rang and rang. Nothing. Let's go back to the late hours of Friday night. The late shift at the hosting company were having a quiet evening. Really, the only ticket item for them was on one of the shared hosts had triggered some alerts about backups failing, which was odd. They were not due to run for another couple of hours. The admin logged onto the server and found the SSH connection between the host and the backup server wasn't working for some reason. They tested with their own credentials, everything appeared fine. Some fiddling and they realised a background service wasn't enabled, so they restarted. Around 1 a.m. on Saturday morning, things started to go wrong. The backup server was running its daily backups. Really, the backup server is a cluster of servers and tasks that ran every night. It backed up everything, hosts, mail servers, even the office PCs. Suddenly, everything was going offline. It started with the servers, connections being lost, then the office desktop machines. Soon, the entire host was offline. They had been a victim of a ransomware attack. Email gone, website gone, their own control systems gone, their PBX telephone system gone, their DNS gone. In their place, a ransom note for a very large amount of Bitcoin. They worked throughout the weekend to try and restore things. They had no way to reach out to their customers. Even their Twitter account had been compromised. Do they pay? Would you? The host had made the technical press. Web hosting victim of ransomware. All client data potentially lost. Joe was reached out to on Twitter by an account offering to restore his site for a fee. The ransom group had failed to reach an agreement with the host and so went after the individual sites affected and was offering to give them their site data. For Joe, the offer was tempting, but with his host being the domain registrar and where he had his DNS, the data was almost less important. It wouldn't restore his site. It wouldn't get his emails back. The host had partially restored the DNS facilities. Joe got his email back and DNS. He used an old backup from a few weeks before. He finally tried to log into his site. His password wouldn't work. Oh, that's right. He needed to use the old password, as this was the old backup. But once in, everything looked fine. The end? So let's go through with the power of hindsight and see what went wrong. Joe installed a browser extension, perhaps without really understanding how much power such things have. An extension with the right privileges can steal any data, and that passes through your browser, much like a WordPress plugin can do anything on your site. Knowing and trusting the source of anything is imperative. Passwords rarely just stop working. In this case, our bad actor deliberately changed it to prevent other bad actors accessing the site and knowing the credentials would shortly be changed. And he only had 24 hours. This should have been a huge red flag. By this point, the site had been compromised. Our bad actor had placed a backdoor and malware on there, had changed the file permissions to lock the version of WordPress. This could all have been prevented with two-factor authentication. A 2FA plugin, and I recommend the 2-factor as a plugin to do this, would have prevented this chain. When the bad actor logged in, they would have needed that second factor. There are other solutions, single sign-on, magic links, but for most sites, the simple solution is 2FA. The malware, we will never know the payload, but it was designed to provide a backdoor and a trigger if it was ever run in a privileged state, i.e. root, which leads to the poor technician. Never run WP CLI as root. The giant warning, it's there for a reason. When you run it as root, it can do anything a root user can do. From there, our bad actor got themselves root access to the web host. This is where it went from something automated to a manual attack. The actor investigated the network, found a vulnerability in the way that they handled backups, and exploited it to pivot once more to take full control and then infect every system with malware and ransomware. For Joe, he was screwed because all of his eggs were in one basket. Had he had his domain registered away from his host, a DNS managed by another service, and an email through something like Gmail for business or whatever it's called today, then he would be significantly less screwed. By consciously spreading the risk to multiple service providers, you potentially increase the cost and complication, but if one party is affected, you can work around it. 2 simple mistakes by 2 separate people resulted in a catastrophic chain. We can always put technical solutions for each problem. Install 2-factor plugin. Prevent WP CLI from ever being able to run as root. But security isn't always about technical solutions. It's about mindsets and humans. Everyone is responsible for security, and we all need to develop those tingly danger sensors. We need to be given the space to develop and not be put in the position to cut corners. But please, seriously, set 2-factor authentication for you and your clients. This tale was fiction, but grounded on real events. There was a website meme generator and a browser extension that grabbed WordPress credentials. More than once, someone has accidentally run WP CLI as root. Warning signs normally have a history after all, and there has been more than one host who has become a victim of ransomware. I think we should let Joe get on with his day. It's not been a great few weeks. I guess we can just hope that he changed his password before one of the many buyers of the bulk buy list tries to log in again.
Have you been offended by the stereotypical depiction of hackers, blatant continuity errors, or the lazy use of HTML to depict server administration tasks by our stock footage actors? Then help is potentially at hand. Like and subscribe to the channel to help us grow, and one day, we might not have to rely on the rather dubious shoehorning of stock footage. By the way, we'll be seeing a lot more of Joe. We're on a budget after all, poor guy.